No. So we'll start firing away here. I know you're busy. You've had an interesting path to where you've gotten now. Obviously, it's been well documented. You've been a race fan all your life. You went with your father. You grew up in Western PA. I guess you went to what is now Latrobe Speedway, as
Right.
that you can recollect. But you know what what was it about racing early on that kind of stuck or made it a passion for you?
I really don't know. I mean, I've always just really enjoyed it from the first time seeing late models and coupes at the time at what was called Schmucker Speedway, now Latrobe, to going to Pittsburgh's Pennsylvania Motor Speedway when they first opened. We did some traveling to late model shows mostly. We were more late model fans than sprint car fans. We'd see sprint cars maybe 2 or 3 times a year, usually when URC would make a Western PA run and stop at Bedford and Jennerstown. And then it wasn't until 1981 when I saw the World of Outlaws for the first time at Lernerville. And then that was it. No more late models. We were sprint car people. Saw the World of Outlaws at Lernerville on a Wednesday night, I believe, and then went to Williams Grove and Lincoln on Friday and Saturday that weekend. And from then on, it was traveling to see sprint cars.
So you actually chose sprint cars over late models. You're at Lernerville. I believe the race Steve Kinzer beat Doug Wolfgang at the race that you saw. What drew you to sprint cars? Like, what was it? Was it the overall speed? Did they just look cool? Because you're a kid still.
All of the above. I mean, it was the speed. It was the fact that everything just looked faster. The cars looked cooler. And at the time, so when I say I was a late model fan, that was back in the days of the wedge late models.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started to kind of get away from the wedge late models. And honestly, I love the way the wedge late models looked. I thought they were really cool. And then when they started to look a little bit more like regular cars, and the sprint cars were so exotic to me that it just kind of drew me in.
Yeah, because I read a lot about you. You were in the sprint car. You're in the Sprint Car Hall of Fame, which I'll talk about a little later. It's hard to believe you didn't end up doing late models as opposed to sprint cars.
I don't know about that. Once I was exposed to what I call good sprint cars, because at the time, Lernerville ran sprint cars weekly, but none of the other tracks around me really ran sprint cars on a weekly basis. And the guys that were racing at Lernerville at the time weren't necessarily, the cream of the crop. Again, watching the World of Outlaws come in and then going to Central Pennsylvania and experiencing the Outlaws versus Posse rivalry for the first time, it just pretty much blew my mind.
So schooling, you went to high school, obviously Western PA. Did you end up in college? Did you?
Yeah. California University of Pennsylvania.
And what's your degree?
I have a creative writing degree.
You don't creative write.
In some ways I do, though. It's very similar. But no, so back to, going to college. So I went to college as basically a way to fund my passion for playing music, because at the time, my plan in life was to be a rock star. That's what I was going to do. So let me explain how I made money going to college. My dad was a mathematics professor at Cal U, so I got free tuition. I lived at home, so no room and board. But at that time, Pennsylvania residents that applied for a state schooling system university and had a minimum 1200 SAT score were offered at least a partial scholarship. It was Pennsylvania's way of trying to keep, I guess, what they assumed would be the better students in the state system. So Claude just knocked stuff off the table here.
It's not a show. It's not a show if Claude doesn't show up.
So I was actually offered a partial scholarship. So as long as I maintained a 3.5 grade average, I got $1,500 a semester to go to school, which back in the late 1980s, that was a decent sum of money for somebody who was living at home and had zero expenses.
So a musician. How did you
Yes.
end up getting into that? I know you play drums.
Yep.
How did you end up getting into to be a musician? And how did that all fit into this kind of making your way to where, the world of Outlaws? Because, and which we'll get to in a minute, it was 1996, 97, but
Right.
you were on your way to being a musician. Were you in a band at that time? And how did you just get into that?
Yeah. So, starting in 1986, from 86 to 94, I played in bands in the Pittsburgh area, some better than others, some fairly successful on a local level, but nothing that really, took off. I was very briefly in a band that had a record deal, although I replaced the drummer that played on the record, so I actually didn't play on the record. But had a lot of fun, got to do a lot of really cool things, but made no money at it. And by the time I graduated from college, I was just working a series of pretty much meaningless day jobs, did a lot of telemarketing, stuff like that.
Yep.
Jobs that I could quit at a moment's notice if we got a call and said, hey, can you come play in Toledo, Ohio for $200 on a Tuesday night? Well, yeah, I won't make it to work the next day, but I can always find another job. So I did that. But still went to races. My dad and I still went to a lot of races. And again, as a Pennsylvania guy, an East Coast guy, reading area auto racing news and speedway scene and things like that, read Guy Smith's column, Kevin Eckert's columns. And I actually met Guy and Kevin at an ARDC midget race at Winber Speedway in Johnstown, Pennsylvania in 1986. And got to be friends with them, started seeing them at, more and more races. I got to be really good friends with Kevin, went to some races with him. He introduced me to Bill Woodside, who was selling programs for the World of Outlaws and also writing for Sprint Car, the Wayne Kindness publication back in the early 90s.
I remember it.
So still playing in bands, but still going to races as well and kind of juggling the meaningless day jobs. And in 1990, I went to the Knoxville Nationals for the first time. And decided, hey, this is awesome. I want to go every year. I missed it in 91 and then went in 92 again. And then from that point, I'm still playing in bands in Pittsburgh. I was just kind of tired of the Pittsburgh scene. I just needed a change of pace. And I had been going to Indy a lot because that's where Kevin lived. So I'd go on a weekend that the band wasn't playing. I'd go to Indy, would go to some races, hang out. And I just decided that I was going to move to Indianapolis and get into another band there, just continue the path of music, but in a different surrounding. And so I moved to Indy, moved in with Kevin. And that's when I started going to more and more World of Outlaws races because I'd help Bill Woodside sell programs. It was a way to go to the races, get in for free, and make a couple dollars on the side. So I'd be the guy walking through the grandstands with an armful of programs. Hey, get your program here. And so I got to know some of the World of Outlaws people that way. And I showed up to help Bill at I-96 Speedway the Monday after the King's Royal in 1995. And Bill wasn't there. So they asked me to sell the programs, do it all myself that night. And at that point, nobody had heard from Bill. We didn't know what was going on. So Ted Johnson asked me if I could come to Memphis Motorsports Park on Wednesday, Battleground Speedway Friday, and Devil's Bowl Saturday. They were doing kind of a Southern swing in July at that time, and said, hey, if Bill shows up, we'll take care of your expenses, give you some money. We just want to make sure we got somebody to sell programs. So I quit the meaningless day job I was working in Indy and went south with the World of Outlaws. And that Friday when we were at Battleground, Bill showed up at the World of Outlaws office in Plano, Texas, and turned in all the stuff and said he was done selling programs. So they asked me if I wanted the program gig full time, and I took it. And that's when things changed. It was no longer musician. It was working for the World of Outlaws.
Yeah, because then you get to 96 and you go to King Speedway.
Right.
And Bobby Gerald got you on the mic for an interview.
Right.
And you actually called a heat race.
Yes.
And what was that experience like? Because you've never announced.
No.
And
no.
Carlton Reimers, the story goes, was impressed. And the next year, you're the voice of the World of Outlaws. Was it just a natural thing for you? I mean, usually you're training or you work at a lower speedway, I'd say lower.
Yeah. But... No, it came very naturally to me. And I don't know. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that, like, being a musician, I sang some backup vocals, but I was very comfortable in front of a crowd. One way or another, it didn't bother me to kind of be the center of attention. And honestly, when you say, oh, by 97, you're the voice of the world of Outlaws, it really didn't happen that way. It took several years to really become the main announcer at all the tracks we went to. And it goes back to the reason I was hired in the first place, because yeah, Carlton was impressed that I was able to do it. But really the reason I was hired was to make sure that all of the sponsor reads, the PAs, the commercials, got handled at all of the racetracks. We go back to earlier in 96 when there was a company called Echo Water that was a sponsor of the Quick Time Award.
Yep.
We were at a racetrack. They brought a bunch of people, a bunch of their employees out. It was near their headquarters. And the announcer never mentioned Echo Water or welcome the people from the company or anything like that. And Echo Water dropped the sponsorship. So really, it all started just because the World of Outlaws needed somebody to make sure all their commercials got read. So a lot of that first year, and even the first couple of years, there were a lot of nights where I didn't do any really announcing of the races. I just did the PA reads, took care of the script, and whoever was the announcer at the time at the track or was doing some of the World of Outlaws races called the action. It took me probably 2 or 3 years until I was doing, 90% of the race calls.
Welcome to another edition of SprintCarUnlimited.com Live. I'm Jeremy Elliott, of course. And first off, I want to apologize for bumping up a day. We thought the World of Outlaws were going to go at Lincoln tomorrow, which obviously we couldn't be in two places at once. But they have moved the show to Wednesday, but I wasn't about to change things twice. So here we are. Obviously, you can leave a question in the chat, or you can call 1-844-543-8589. We'll have the number up the entire show. And before we get to the chat or your phone calls, we're going to take a look at some of the storylines from last week that you may want to talk about. At the top of the list, I think, High Limit. After a too long 25-day break, they get back in action at Texas Motor Speedway. They lost Texarkana 67 last Wednesday. They ended up getting 2 of the 3 in, moving over to Texas Motor Speedway. And Brent Marks led the entire distance on Thursday, which should be no surprise. He won the finale at Texas Motor Speedway last year, $50,000. The second night, which was Saturday, they took a break in between. Rico Abreu, not a surprise that he wins, but Kyle Larson started on the pole. So Rico gets the jump, goes on to lead every lap, really went unchallenged. And that's 3 wins in his last 4 starts. And Rico looks pretty good right now. I know he struggled at the beginning of the year a little bit, but 2 wins at Knoxville, one of them a World of Outlaws win, and then, of course, winning with High Limit this week. Got a hit on Brad Sweet, finished second and third again. He's fast. And he has 8 top 5 finishes in 8 High Limit starts. A lot of credit to Ty Wolfgang. I think every year we say the same thing. This is the year Brad dips down a little bit. This is the year, somebody gets him or whatever. And obviously they had a crew chief change. Didn't hurt him or hasn't hurt him. I think Ty's done a great job. Obviously Brad being there as well, can't diminish that. And he's just Mr. Consistency. And he has an 83-point lead over Tyler Courtney in the standings. So calendar flips over, but nothing changes for Brad Sweet. And I don't think he's going 35 races this year without a win. Just saying. David Gravel, we kind of joked last week, oh no, he went 6 races without winning. Well, he ended that streak at Eldora Speedway last Friday night. They were able to get 1 of the 2 shows in. Of course, rain just wreaking havoc everywhere. And David led every lap. And I know Donnie Schatz came up and wanted to challenge coming from 10th to 2nd, but David was able to hold him off and get the win. It's his 6th win of the year. Again, much like Brad Sweet, calendar flips over. David Gravel's still fast, and now he comes to Central Pennsylvania, where he's good at Lincoln and Williams Grove, where they'll be this week. So don't be surprised if David Gravel continues to post wins this week. The World of Outlaws, as I said, visit Central Pennsylvania. Can anybody stop the Outlaws? You have Danny Dietrich. You have Anthony Macri. Chase Dietz is a guy maybe you have to watch. Had a good showing against the Outlaws at the National Open last year in his own car. They've been pretty fast. You have Troy Wagaman. But I think Macri and Dietrich and Chase are the fast ones. Obviously, Freddie Raymer will be there as well. No Brent Marks, so don't get too excited. We'll see. The Outlaws are fast. I think it's going to be a long week for the locals, but you never know. So also, if you want to talk about teching, I know that's a hot subject right now. So we're ready for your phone calls to chat. Let it fly. Is there ever going to be a time when the World of Outlaws acknowledge they're not the only game in town and sprint car racing is better because of it? I mean, I think they've started to acknowledge that there's another series slowly but surely. It's just something they've never done. And you can't teach that dog new tricks. Sorry to be cliche. But they will in time. If there's staying power with high limit, which I think there will be, I think they're going to have to acknowledge some things. And I agree. I think sprint car racing's better for it. Some will disagree. There's good and bad. Obviously, we'd love to have Rico, Brad, Courtney, and all these guys at all the World of Outlaws shows. But I think what you lose there, I think you gain by the big shows are heightened even more now. I think there's more hype about an ordinary race at Knoxville in April. So I think there's good and bad. And also, look, there's 29 guys on a national tour. They're all earning more money. They might be spending more, yes, but they're earning more. So a lot of good and bad, or not a lot of bad, I don't think. I think there's more good than bad. But, yeah, they'll have to acknowledge it at some point. Jim from Buffalo on line 1. I'm sure I'm going to hear about the Winnipeg Jets coming back last night. Jim, what do you got for me?
Right you are.
Deserve it.
Yeah, around 8:30, 8:45, some guy sent me a DM saying that the
Guilty.
Jets were imposters, and from the Knoxville Moss said, "Oh yeah, the Jets are done." But it goes back to the old racing thing. You can't win the race on the first lap, right? You got to run the whole race.
Well, they waited to 1.6
anyway.
seconds left in a 3-period game to tie. But look, that aside, yes, I think I called them phonies, and I still don't think they're getting out of the next round. But just how good is hockey? How good is Game 7, 2 overtimes? It's second to none. And I'm a football guy, big time. So, yeah, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, I mean, people that love sprint car racing, you should give the Stanley Cup playoffs a try. Not every game's like Sunday night or Saturday night, but they're pretty intense.
They are.
Anyways, well, enough about hockey. But saw your 90 at 9 this morning, and it's something I've been trying to bring up a little bit the last few weeks about Zach Hampton and even Chris Windham. I mean, those guys have shown probably the most improvement in the outlaw rookie class. And, Zach is starting to learn how to be a race car driver, and he's starting to realize that it's a really good idea to be able to roll your car into the trailer after the end of the night and make a little money. Or at least you don't lose it that way.
Yeah, I think Zach Hampton, now look, we're 18, 20 races into the season. I mean, got to preface obviously what we're talking about saying that. But I agree. I think it's one of the better stories because of the reaction when he got the ride. It was poo-pooing it, scoffing at him. And at some point, yeah, rightly so. I mean, he crashed, had some epic crashes. We'll use that word. But he's been he's learned to calm down. At least it appears that way early on. He races harder when he has a car that he feels he can, move up through the order. He's putting it in the trailer. He's using his head more. Now, again, as I said in the 90 at 9, I don't think he's going to rattle off 10 top fives, but I think for a guy who came in and was heavily criticized and who was going to walk away from the sport, I think for the way he's performed this year, I think it's a definite story.
Oh yeah, he's turning from a gasser into a race car driver, and that's what you got to do when you get to the business end of it. I mean, these things, they don't roll out of the trailer for nothing, that's for sure. And props to Chris Windham. I think he's slowly but surely starting to show his wing potential now. He's creeping forward pretty much every week. He's making the A mains, even with a loaded field. I think that's great. But next subject, I thought the 410 feature at Knoxville last week, Saturday night, was pretty damn good with Ryan Timms and Brian Brown. They were trying to crash each other, a couple times going off it too, but that was one hell of a feature race. So
it was okay. I saw a lot of people saying it was great, and I'm like, my definition of great, but it was good. And I made a comment. We shot the podcast. I made a comment to Ryan Hand. I think the racing's been better at Knoxville this year than it was last year at this time. And of course, we had some issues with the Nationals where it wasn't as good. I think we're going to see something different this year.
Well, I think it was they put on some new dirt this year, roomed it a little bit different, and it was freaking cold last year on Friday and Saturday. I mean, there's no two ways about it. That was springtime weather. But just two other quick things. Unfortunately, the 69K proved to be human last weekend. I mean, I felt bad for those guys hauling ass all the way down there to Texas, and then they didn't stink up the joint. I mean, they're fast and everything like that. They just didn't have good luck. I mean, you heard anything about maybe what happened or bad adjustments or just one of those weekends?
One of those weekends. They had a flat tire the second night with Pittman. He was in a qualifying spot in the heat race and he had a flat. And then at that point you're in the B main and your night is difficult. It's not like you were going to advance, 12 spots in the A main. You just weren't going to make a lot of moves at that place. So I think it's just one of those weekends. I'm not sure what happened Thursday. I don't know if it shut off and they just took it back to the trailer, but one of those weekends. I'll look at the body of work over one weekend. So we'll see how they do this week. I've heard different things on who's going to run the car. I think Pittman will be in it at the Grove. We'll see who's in it at Lincoln on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think they make cash this weekend. I mean, they're too good to be kept down weekend after a weekend. But just two other quick things. On Friday night, for all those people that don't have streaming and won't be at the Grove, Dirt Vision's going to have a free preview on Friday night from the show from the Grove. And I don't know if it's on dirtvision.com or their YouTube channel.
I think it's Facebook.
People out there that don't have it, tune in.
Yeah, I think it's Facebook and YouTube, the free deal for the Outlaws. But you'll be able to see it. So that's the most important thing.
And last but not least, I'm worried about my Jets against Dallas. They're banged up. That was a rough and tough series. That's good. So I guess we'll see what we see, right?
I will leave you with this. I hate the Blues because I'm a Chicago Blackhawks fan. You can't like both of them. But I do like Binnington a lot, the goaltender for St. Louis. Mm-hmm. He was incredible during the Four Nations, and he was incredible in that series. So I have to give some credit to a Blues player. Painful.
Oh yeah, he's a money goaltender. Yes, that's for sure. Anyways, have a great week, and maybe we'll talk to you again.
Yep. Bye-bye. Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate it. All right. We're going back to the chat. Do you expect many of the underfunded teams to travel to Western PA and Ohio this weekend? Not Ohio. That they're not going to go out to Ohio. You might get a guy at Lernerville too, maybe. I don't know. I don't expect it though. as of now, or I should say as of earlier today, it was mid-30s at Lincoln for a car count and 40 at the Grove. So that's not many guys taking off and going the other way. But with the rain that we've had, I wouldn't doubt if we see a couple of guys maybe go out to Western PA. I think Ohio's a little far for them, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see one or two in Western PA. Nice call with the Woo Lincoln Speedway race moving to Wednesday. Yes, tomorrow's really iffy. Now it is getting better. It's not a washout, but there's thunderstorms that could pop up, and your walk-up crowd's just not going to be as good. Wednesday, it looks perfect. 70-some degrees. You couldn't ask for better conditions. There's a difference between moving a race when there's no rain date there and then having one built in. They had one built in. It's the Outlaws. I think this goes against, the not liking rain dates and stuff, which I don't. But this one was built in. It handled well, and it was a good decision. I think they'll have a better crowd on Wednesday. Any updates on Dylan Cisney? No. I don't think he has anything right now. I think the Jonathan Jones thing might have ended already, and nothing on Dylan. What's up with GGRD and Norris? The tweet was very, when somebody says good luck on your next venture, that means you're not going to be in the car. So not sure. He missed the transfer by one at Knoxville, and a decent field. Dylan hasn't been there, so haven't had a chance to check on that. It's Monday, and I haven't had a chance to check with Dylan yet, but obviously he's not going to run that car anymore. At least it sounded that way in the tweet. Who's winning the most so far this season? Rain. Pennsylvania's lost 15 shows already. I think there's only 13 that have been run, if I'm not mistaken. The Grove's really gotten hit hard with six shows getting clipped out of 8. And really, it's 7. They ran 2 features in one night. One was a postponement. So I think not good for the Grove. And look, and for the Grove this week, they opened the gates. That was probably $10,000. They got rained out after qualifying. That's probably $10,000. You have all your personnel there already. The lights are out. All that stuff is figured in. You have your full-time employees. You open the gates, you're taking a bigger hit. So, and now what if those people use those rain checks for Outlaws tickets? Again, you're losing some scratch. Why wouldn't sprint cars permanently move their nose wings forward several inches to cancel dirty air and improve passing? I mean, that's a Danny Lasowski thing. He talked about that openly. Is the racing that bad? I've been watching it for 10 years. I don't think it's any worse. I think you're going to see, we talked about it earlier with Jim. Knoxville was decent. The Outlaws showed, other than Kyle Larson just pistol whipping the field at Jacksonville, the rest of it was decent. I've seen decent races here this year in Central PA. I think sometimes we get caught up. Somebody says the racing's bad, and then everybody kind of piles on and looks for their worst. I don't think it's any worse than maybe 10 years ago. Now, to me, the wing thing's interesting. I'm certainly not going to say Danny Lasowski's wrong. I would like to see more compounds from Hoosier, like they're doing with the late models right now. I talked to a couple people who used to be on the road back, 2006 to 2013. And when they had more choices, it allows for comers and goers. Somebody puts a harder one on, they're going to come on at the end. So they put soft on, they're going to be a rabbit at the beginning. You see where you shake out. And then there was a middle one as well. I don't think a lot of people use that one, but you get choice in it, and people can make good choices or bad choices, and you have comers and goers. So I think the answer for me right now, because we're not gonna alter too much. So I'd like to see compounds. I really would. That's the answer for me right now. I'd like to see dish wings, but if you don't change tires, you're only changing half of it. And I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. What else do we get? Jeremy, you're looking younger this week. Clean, healthy living. I don't know about that. I got a shot in my thumb today. I know that. I had trigger thumb or whatever on my left hand, and they gave me a shot in my thumb. That didn't feel too sporty. But no, I'm fine. Not too bad. All right. Love the Larson comment about it being easier to win an outlaw race than a high limit race. I don't know if it's easier. I think, look, you got circumstances. There's different circumstances. If you time bad, I don't care if you're a high limit race or an outlaws race, you're not winning. You've got to time respectable. You can't time 15th. You can't time 12th. I think a good stat that I need to look up is what is the farthest back somebody's timed and then won that night. That would be a good stat to have. It's something I'll look at this week. I'm sure we'll see a lot of it with with Williams Grove and Lincoln this week. It's something I'll try and work on in any downtime. But if you time bad, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Kyle Larson wasn't getting past 9th on Thursday night. What? Got out of drive? What? The car wasn't good? No, it makes it more difficult. You get a 25 lap race when you don't have a lot of yellows. And in those races, you traditionally don't. There's some circumstantial stuff that goes on and situational stuff that goes on in these races that determine winners. So I don't think one's harder than the other. It depends. All right. So did you say the 69K will be at Lincoln? I think you might see it at Lincoln. I've heard some rumblings. So as I heard it today. Now, whether that changes, obviously it could, but I've heard they're going to be at Lincoln. Definitely at the Grove, though. All right, what else do we got? Will Zach Hampton keep it inside the ballpark this weekend at Williams Grove? I'm going to say yes. Actually, that's a good sidebar bet. little prop bet. Love the prop bets. Yes, I do believe that Zach Hampton will keep it in the ballpark this week at Williams Grove. And I'm going to say, I think he makes 1A main. Now, people will say, oh, that's no big deal. Well, and I don't mean a provisional. I think he's going to make 1A main this week. And considering he went out of the ballpark twice last year in 2 nights, that's pretty good. All right. I was waiting for this one. With 2 national traveling series, it is producing watered down fields. Friday's Outlaws Heat 4, Baylog, Torgerson, Cole Macedo, Lucius Clark, DeVault, Creed, Nida is not an Outlaws quality heat race. I can't argue that. It is not. But, okay, let's add Brent Marks, Courtney Sweet, and Rico. Who's to say they would have been in that heat? We don't know that. And, yes, the fields aren't like a Eldora Kings Royal field. The Knoxville field a couple weeks ago when the Outlaws were there. That is correct. But that doesn't mean having 2 national series, the good doesn't outweigh the bad. So I agree with that. That's a good comment. I agree with that. There's some pretty decent rookies on the road, though. Although there's some that, like Danny Sams, he's struggling right now. Hunter Schoenberg, struggling right now. Although he finished 10th at Eldora, which, considering what was going on, that's decent. Yeah, I mean, I can't argue that. What else do we got? Hopefully we have more. All right. We stuck on that one? Oh, we have a glitch. Do we stop? Oh, okay. We're going to a phone call. Ken on line 2. Ken, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good this week, Jeremy. I was just wondering, have you heard the actual status for Emerson Axum? He hasn't missed an outlaw race yet, but he isn't officially an outlaw, I don't believe.
He is not a platinum member. I'm sure he's on like a 40 or 50 race deal. They give those out. I know it's kind of quiet, kept quiet, but they give out partial deals, but he is not a platinum member, no. And I don't think he should be. Meaning, if I was that team, I would not make him I would not become a platinum member, because at some point he may want to run some other races. And I think it's good to get to as many shows as you can, and then maybe run Outlaws next year or the year after that. The Outlaws aren't going away. Emerson Axum's not going to go from, 20 years old to 52. So there's plenty of time. And I like the fact that they're bringing him along in what I feel is a smart way.
I think a good thing for him to do, I know he did last year a couple of races, but I think maybe one of the best things for him would be to come in and run the whole speed week in Pennsylvania this year. I remember when Greg Hodnett came in, even before he came to the area full time, he came into the area and ran the whole speed week a couple times. And I think it definitely got him a better racer, and I think it could do the same for Emerson.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to see Emerson Axum at Speed Week. I think you get a lot of races in a short amount of time, and they all pay $10,000 or more. I mean, that first and foremost. So the pay's good. You get a lot of racing in. Crew can grind it out a little bit. That 10 races in 10 nights is not an easy deal when you get to about race 8. It's, I did a day in the life when I was at the newspaper. I did a day in the life with Greg Hodnett and Ryan Hand, and we did it at Speed Week. And I followed the team to everywhere they went that weekend, even to the car wash, getting up in the morning. By day 8, you're kind of like, okay, you're not as enthusiastic as you were day 1, 2, and 3. So I think it would be good for him to do that. But I want to see him get laps at a lot of different places. I want to see him get a good notebook for the team, continue to gel. He's still a young guy. Maybe even go to the West Coast once, because you're going to go out there if you run High Limit or the World of Outlaws. So I think he's doing the right thing now.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, because I'm looking at this weekend. I don't really see anybody other than the regular Outlaws coming in, because the guys in the Midwest are either going to go to the High Limit or they're going to stay at Knoxville, which I see Brown's planning on staying at Knoxville this week, and he's not even going to run the whole High Limit deal out there. So guys are going to stay closer to home for Knoxville with their big money this year.
Yeah, I think too. Yeah, it's $6,000 to win, and what believe $1,000 to start or something like that. It's the money's too good at Knoxville. And the other thing is we're going to start getting races in, and you're not going to see High Limit guys jumping over to the World of Outlaws as much. The High Limit's in Kansas this week at 81 and Lakeside, and then they go up to Tri-City, I believe in Illinois.
Yeah.
So so they won't be in this area. So I agree. I think you're just going to see, World of Outlaws guys this weekend.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your taking my call, Jeremy, and I wish you better luck with your picks this week. You really had a tough one last week.
Ryan Hand and I pick. I got to put the picks on YouTube. Just not the whole podcast, because I'm not going to do that because of our subscribers, but I got to put the picks up. We were just talking about it because I did the podcast before I jumped on here, and I did take a beating last week. I don't think I had a top 5 last week. It was embarrassing, but I'm still ahead of him.
you never figure the 69K to finish 23rd.
No, that cost me a lot. That cost me a lot of spots. Luckily, I had a nice cushion, but we'll see. It'll be ebb and flow on the picks. Thank you very much, Ken. I appreciate it.
Yep, sir.
All right. What do we got now? I assume we're going back to the chat. Friday Woo looks to be a wash. Not a wash. I didn't see a wash unless it changed in the last hour or two. I've not looked at the weather in the last hour or two. So, will Sisney be in a car for Woo, Lincoln, and Williams Grove? Definitely not Lincoln. I doubt he'll be at the Grove. I don't know what car he'd run. I don't know what's the Indy Race Parts car doing, but Parker Price Miller's been in that in some shows, so maybe it comes east with Parker in it. Not sure what's going on with Guy Forbrook as far as a timeline, but I think if that car is going to run and Parker's available, I think Parker will run it. Otherwise, there's a chance for Dylan, but I don't think you'll see him at Williams Grove this week. Watered down fields are Tyler Swank. Watered down fields have allowed some of these young drivers to get very valuable laps and helps them learn racing with the best. Again, another good point. I think because I know who Lauda Hunt is. I think he's right, and I think Tyler's right. I think there's good and bad. You can bring up points on both sides, and that's a good point. And because here's the thing, what happens now? The Outlaws are relatively young on the whole, and so is High Limit on the whole. But what happens when these guys leave? You got to have more young guys to jump in. You got to get laps. So I agree. All right. What else we got? What do you think about support series? Oh boy, Jim, you're going to get me in trouble. In most cases, it's needed and you can always keep them till the end of the night, but the support needs to be in a controlled number for 2 heats and a feature. They could have used it at Texas, obviously, but here's the thing. You can't put a support series on the day before because it rains 3 inches. So, I know a bunch of people got online and they were like, oh, we could have used a support series, but you didn't know that. That's a hindsight thing. I'm not a big fan of support series. I like that High Limit just runs their shows. Maybe an invitational where you can run hot laps for them and then run the feature at the end of the night. Something where it's invitation only and you only get 24 cars. You run maybe 3 heats, no consi, and a feature after High Limit or the World of Outlaws. So I understand both sides of it, but I don't want to see 50 cars. I don't want to see 40 cars, and I don't even want to see 30 cars in a support division for a national series event. Keep it respectable, 24 invitation, 3 heats, or something that's not going to draw a ton of cars, because the promoters know. They know who's coming. So, yeah, no, I'm okay with what you're saying. I just want to guard against 40 cars in a sport division. There's no need for that. All right. Moving on. We got Will on line 3. Will, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. The temperature is 86 degrees in California. It looks like we're going to get to see a race this weekend.
We're going to get to see races. It's just going to be different days.
Well, we've been the races out here have been canceled. For the 410 series, they've been canceled like 2 or 3 weeks in a row now.
Well,
so I doubt that it's going to rain this week. I'm hoping. It's only Monday though.
No, never know. Could have a transformer go bad. It could be too windy. It could be. Obviously, fire's part of the equation out there. So you never know. Hopefully nothing gets in the way. Hopefully nothing gets in the way.
But if it does, let's say that the race does run, at least hopefully all the stars will be there because they're probably itching at getting in the car and go racing.
Yeah, it's at Antioch. California is so interesting. Look, the tracks are so far apart, and I think maybe people don't realize that, and they're so far apart. I don't know who's going to go to Antioch. Like, I can't say definitely Dominic Scelzi's going to Antioch. I don't know for sure. I mean,
where else would he run?
Nowhere. He doesn't run every weekend.
Well, so versus nowhere, he would run. Yeah, he might not. I know he won't race at Petaluma.
Yeah.
So he doesn't go there. But I'm figuring that, there's a lot of guys that want to race, and like the Golubics and, of course, Sanders. I would hope Scelzi would be there. That would be good.
And they may be. I just don't know.
Will be there. I don't think Tanner Holmes will be there.
No, it'd probably be at Knoxville.
Yeah.
Or High Limit.
Where did he finish?
Wasn't good.
Yeah.
Wasn't good. It's a different animal on the road. And that's it. Different animal.
Absolutely. That's why, it puzzles me sometimes that these guys will leave their, leave home and go on the road without, really competing in a series at all locally. And then, they get a rude awakening, for sure.
Well, the only way you're going to get better, and if that's what you want to do, you got to leave. You got to take your lumps. I just saw a comment. Neto and Grasty won't be at Antioch. That sucks because I have Neto with Ryan, so I got to pick somebody else. So at least I know before their race. I took Neto. Again, who goes to these races? How many guys are running that whole tour? It's up in the air. So I appreciate that comment. I appreciate it. But yeah, you got to leave to get better. If that's what you want to do. If you're going to be a local racer, fine, don't. But if you want to be a national guy, which Tanner Holmes does, he's got to leave. He's got to take his lumps. And they're taking some lumps. That's why when I look at bodies of work, I don't get caught up in one race or two races or even three races. I look at the body at work, and then I'll say, well, they look good now. Let's see how they do on the road. I don't get caught. I just don't get caught up in it.
Now you give me something to think about, with Neto not going to be there and Grasty not going to be there.
Yeah. The Bloods and the Crips will be there. The Bloods and the Crips will be there. It's not a good area, man. It's not a good area.
No, it's not. It's just as bad as Stockton.
Well, I have a friend who was on the road with the Outlaws, and he said one time they were on lockdown. They couldn't leave the pit area because there was something going on out on the road. So I shouldn't joke about it. I don't, but look, I don't know if I'd race there. I'm not getting shot for a race.
Yeah. There's not really a good way in or out of that place.
Yeah.
It is the dangerous side if you're a civilian.
Well, and that would be me. So.
All right. Well, I don't want to take anybody's time. Thank you for taking my call, and hopefully we've given the Chaz something to talk about tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. All right. What else? Going back to the chat, I guess. Could Brent Marks be a serious contender for the High Limit Championship? I just don't think anybody's going to challenge Brad Sweet. Again, and I always go back to this. It probably seems repetitive. Last year, he went 35 races without winning. He's not going to go 35 races without winning this year. He's already won 25% of the races, 2 out of 8. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he will start struggling. but it just doesn't look that way. And then if you go by some of the comments we've seen today, I mean, he's not running against Gravel every night. He's not running against Esposito every night. That's not to say High Limit's bad or anything. Tyler Courtney, but Tyler Courtney's struggling a little bit too. I think Brent Marks is going to be better. I think Aaron Reitzel's going to be fine. He had a problem last week. He had a mechanical problem. But Brad's just, I don't see anybody competing with Brad. That's it. Whether it's Reitzel, Marks, Courtney, Rico, they'd have to go on big runs. And Brad's going to have to not finish a couple. He's a good points racer. Got any plans to venture to Sarver this year? I was out last year for the High Limit show, and I could see myself doing the same this year as well. I like Lernerville. It's a racy joint. I remember going back to the Silver Cup years and years and years ago with my father, and then I went there to cover some races. So it's likely that I will be at Lernerville at some point this year. Weak heat races sounds like an Outlaws problem. Well, look, where you time. You're going to have weak heat races. It happens because you line up by your time. It's not. I've seen some high limit weak heat races. So it's just where your time. Now, I do like that High Limit evens out their groups. They don't have one group that's just drastically better than the other group. I think the Outlaws should institute that. You can't tell me it can't be done. We have SprintCarRatings.com. Hell, you could call me for that. I'll tell you who I think's good and who isn't. But you have SprintCarRatings.com. And he even has a set now where he just does it for the year. So you can divvy it out. You can take your point guys. Okay, 1, 3, 5. They're on one side. 2, 4, 6 are on the other side. It's not hard to do. It's not exactly, you don't have to be an engineer or a mathematician to know this. So I wish the Outlaws would do that. It's one thing that High Limit does that I like. But once the times are laid down, you know, it's where you qualify. Look, more compounds would be increased cost to teams. You would need to carry all sizes in both compounds, high dollar teams. Okay, racing's expensive. Number one, racing's expensive. And I know that's not a popular, I mean, it's always been expensive. Do I think that would increase costs? I don't know. Do you have to carry them? If you're a guy who runs soft all the time, I mean, maybe you don't like the hard compound. Maybe the compounds aren't like that, meaning there's a big variance between them. I think that's things that you're right. The cost of tires is something's got to give there. I'm not saying that. But so do we keep things as is just because, I mean, if it goes up $10, are we really, I don't know. I mean, I wish they would go down, but they're not going to go down. When something goes up, a product, meaning a product, not gas, a product usually doesn't go down. So I see your point. I think it's a valid point, but I think that there could be a workaround there somehow, some way, or at least I hope there would be. But that's a good comment. Chase, Jeremy, completely unacceptable that the 69K quits when things aren't going his way. It's a business. The track wasn't overly racy. It's going to start 24th. They weren't good in the B main. Did he have a problem? I mean, it's risk versus reward. You're going to go and run in the back and burn tires. Now, I understand, but they're not running for points. They're not running for points. And I don't know if they had a problem. The B main, they did not look good. They started on the pole of the B main and were running fourth in a hurry. So did they have a problem? So I'm not ready to say they quit. When's the last time you saw that car drop from first to fourth that quick in a B main? When's the last time it ran a B main? So I'm not ready to say they quit. Again, I don't know if they did or didn't, but I will ask. You stated that people will use the rain stubs Friday for Outlaw shows. If I'm right, I believe they can only use them for the regular show. Yeah, that may be too. It didn't used to be that way, so I don't know. They have at times said you can't use it for the World of Outlaws events. I'm sure a lot of people just got refunds. So, yes, you are correct. At times, that's a rule that's come and gone at tracks. Some have said you can, some have said you can't. Some tracks have said both. So it's not been a good year at the Grove, so I wouldn't doubt that that's the truth. And I do believe they changed that a few years ago, that you couldn't use them for World of Outlaws events, which is smart. Jeremy, when will we in PA be able to bet on sprint car racing? Good luck. Good luck. You can only bet in Oregon, Connecticut, and Ontario. As of now that I know, that's the only three. I didn't hear of any more states being added. You can do the thing where they can be higher or lower, and you got to pick two guys. They say like Buddy Kofoid 3.5, higher or lower, and you get another. You can do that. But to bet on the winner, I think that's a long time away. And it's a good thing, because these betting houses or wherever it's being run would lose a ton of money because their odds are stupid. I don't know how you could have Aaron Reitzel at plus 3,800 at Texas. I know he didn't win, but plus 3,800? Are you kidding me? Brent Marks was, I think, plus 1,500 when he won, something like that. And the second night, he was plus 700. You can't make money like that. It's just, I don't know what they're doing. Everyone that thinks sprint car racing isn't good apparently hasn't watched the NASCAR Cup Series at a short track or a super speedway. Okay. I mean, I don't watch the NASCAR races. I'm usually tied up on a Sunday, catching up on all the stuff I didn't do during the week. But I know some NASCAR fans, they don't think it's bad. It's just different. It's just a different type of racing. It's the long game. You're not going to get in there and, do sliders on each other and stuff for it's long races. Do you think Emerson Axum makes the trip to PA this week? I don't know, but I can find out with one text. I think he comes in. It makes sense because he needs laps in PA. He came to PA last year, so I'm going to say that he comes in. But if he didn't and went to the high limit races in Kansas and Illinois, that wouldn't surprise me either. I'll shoot a text and have an answer for you, hopefully in the next few minutes. But I wouldn't be surprised if he comes to PA. How about the comment the other week that half miles suck? I don't know. I've seen some good races at Port Royal. Knoxville looks pretty good, lately. I just, so I don't get into that. How about, David, I just don't. Eldora's pretty good. How was the Kings Royal last year? Pretty good. It's a half mile last I checked. I don't buy into that. I think you can have a bad race. I think you can have a bad race at Jacksonville. I think you have a bad race at Eldora. I think you can have a good race. There's some that produce more good racing than others, obviously. So, David, you like the half miles, so you're going to you'll be glad they keep them. Eldora is not always good. I've seen a couple bad ones there, but not many. I love that place. Favorite track is Eldora over Knoxville. Yes. I disagree. Okay. When I go to the races, woo or high limit, I want to see races, lots of races and cars. I do not like paying $40 for 5-6 races with lots of downtime in between the races. But I assume this has to do I'm with the support division. Do you want to be there till midnight? Because while you may want to, people's attention spans have changed. They don't want to. And the diehards, they're dying. Okay? They're thinning out. So you've got to do stuff to streamline your program. It's entertainment. Baseball did it with the pitch clock. College football, which I never thought would happen, they now have the NFL rules of the running clock till the last 2 minutes. Never thought that would happen, but they do. So it's about providing the most entertainment you can in a respectable time period. I know people who go to race who have went to the races the first time and it got long and they never went back. They don't want to be there all night. Some will do it. Some won't. Oh, God. You don't want to get me in that discussion. Radio or two-way radio? That is the question. Jesus. Let's just say I don't believe you have a two-way radio. How about that? I think that's a reach. It's funny. I got into the cheating discussion today, and David, I appreciate you bringing it up. So, if the good teams cheat, why did Brad Sweet go 35 races without a win? Or is he a bad cheater? Why did Logan Schuchart and Shark Racing have, let's face it, the last couple years have not been good? They will tell you that. So if Shark Racing was doing all this cheating, why didn't they win more? I heard for years, Donnie Schatz cheating. Okay, then why hasn't he won more than 5 or 6 races the last 4 or 5 years? What, he just stopped cheating and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to let everybody else win? The cheating argument is something people throw up because you can't prove it. So I'm not saying there aren't guys out there doing stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm not naive. And I know of some things that have happened, but the good guys win no matter what the format is. The good guys win no matter what the rules are. You have ebb and flow in this sport. It's, Jovan Schultz says this a lot. It's hard to win these races sometimes. This isn't easy to be good at. And, so yeah, I'm not going to go down the cheating rabbit hole because I can throw up those examples I gave you about Logan and Brad and, David, I guess when you were in the Mondoc car, you didn't win. Now people want to say you cheat out. What? You just learn to cheat? It's just, again, a person who cheats and wins a lot is going to want to keep winning a lot. And if you have them drop off, I don't think anybody's saying, that's what I mean. I don't think the bigger teams have to cheat that much to win. I think they're just better drivers, better funded, better crew chiefs, they're better. So not saying it doesn't go on in the sport, just saying I don't think it's as rampant as everybody thinks it is. All right, what else do we got? Pete on line 4. Pete, what do you got for me?
Hey, I heard you. I missed the first part of the show. I'm stuck working.
It's okay. Got to earn a living.
About Brent Marks having some kind of a mechanical issue Saturday night. Do you know what happened?
I do not know what happened. I know obviously he was in the dash, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to remember back. It's been kind of a busy day.
I think he was in the dash. I think he finished 6th.
Yeah,
started 6th and then fell back to 7th, and then he just didn't go anywhere.
Yeah,
I was really expecting to see him do something. I hated to see him start 6th, but the way he's ran there, in previous times, I figured he would go somewhere, and he just got stuck where he was at and didn't go.
Well, the track was different than Thursday, a lot different, and again, he's pinned back farther. He was in clean air out front. on Thursday. Look good. I just think and sometimes you're just not as good as you were the night before. I don't necessarily know if anything was mechanically wrong. I do think that he just wasn't as good. That happens.
Well, I mean, you just said it. These races are hard to win.
They're not easy, no.
And everyone seems pretty tight right now. It's kind of who's out front is tending to stay there, unless your last name's Larson.
Hey, he looked human this week. His average finish coming into the race this weekend was 1.3, dropped to 5.5. With a second and a ninth. So he's human.
Yeah, it probably won't stay like that. It might. It might. I don't know. I'm not a Larson hater or a Larson lover. I like watching him do his thing out there, but I don't think it'll stay at 5 for all that much longer. I mean,
no.
I would think you could argue with 10 more laps, he might have won Saturday night. He was pretty sporty. Not that Rico wasn't. I mean, Rico's great, and he did what he had to do to win the race. But Larson wasn't giving him any breathing room. It's not like Rico ran away and hid.
No, Larson came on at the end in traffic a little bit, and I thought, oh, God, here we go, with car getting better. Or Larson sometimes misses his marks. He admits that. Mm-hmm. He runs a car hard, so he's going to miss his marks. He's admitted that. I've talked to him about it. It's not, but boy, right now there's nobody better. When he shows up, he's good, and he's gonna. I think he'll be at 81 Speedway probably. And considering NASCAR's at Kansas and they go to Lakeside, I'm gonna say he's gonna be there Friday night as well at Lakeside. I would bet that he's going to be in victory lane at least one of those nights. So it's just one of those things. Like I said, I think he just got buried. I think he got buried on Thursday, and it's tough to get out of. And it was a bigger track, and it's harder to make up ground on a bigger track. So especially that one where they don't race there much. There's not a lot of races. Yeah. There. So
yeah, and I like that track. I went down last year and watched them there. It's a nice facility for sure. And obviously it's not a bull ring, but they are flying around there, and I thought it put on a good race. I mean, it wasn't the best race I'd ever seen, but it was a solid race to go see them.
No, like I said, they're going to go back again. I think the more they run there, hopefully they start running more races there. I know Chaz just said it used to be wider in the mid 2000s, and I don't know. I know it's sat for a while. So, hopefully it gets back to where there's, I hate to use the term wear and tear, and it develops back to the way it used to be. So we'll see.
All righty, man. Well, I appreciate it, and have a good night.
Yep, you too, Pete. Thanks for calling. All right, let's get back to the chat. I think with Jacob and David, we cracked the code. Chaz, you're funny. Come out with a controversial topic about said driver. Then the driver calls in. We talk the controversy, then lead into other topics. I guess if you want, if that's what you want to do, I don't, at least make it believable. A two-way. I don't even think like Sound Gear is picking up steam in this sport, and I don't even think they make a two-way at this point that can happen. I don't really know, but here's what everybody's forgetting about the thing at Eldora. Where did you think Donnie Schatz was going to run? He hasn't been on the fence at Eldora since 2013. If he's coming in the middle to the bottom. Fact. So, how does he see him? You don't have to see him. You just look up at the board and see the 15 there. You know where he's running. I just don't. To me, it was a non-issue, but that's fine. He called in and it worked, so it's good. What about the watch Rico had on Saturday night? Yeah, I saw that too. I don't know. Maybe we should investigate the watch. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not going to look and see a watch where I can't see what it does. I mean, when I'm sitting at home watching it on streaming and then throw up all kinds of conjecture and whatever. Maybe when he comes to the area, I'll ask him what the watch does. So, will a PA posse member win a race this week? No, I don't think so. If one does, I think it'll be Anthony Macri at Lincoln. Anthony, it's funny. Anthony used to be, Lincoln was like his Achilles heel, which is odd because he started his career there. But he has gotten better at Lincoln. I think he's as good at Lincoln, if not better, than he is at Port Royal. He deceptively good at Lincoln. The Grovey's going to time well. I have no doubt about that. I think Anthony Macri's the hope. Dietrich can race, but he's got to time well. So his pill draw's got to be good. I don't think that's a hot take or anything. So I think those are the two, and God bless everyone else, because I think the Outlaws, I mean, Buddy's good in here. He's good at Lincoln. Won at the Grove last year. David, obviously you're good. You've won at Lincoln and the Grove. Carson's really good at the Grove. Gio has been good at both of them. He has a win at the Grove. Sheldon, once in a while, he's looked good at the Grove. I think last year he was on the podium at the National Open. So it's going to be tough sledding for the locals this week. Watch the 69K. Pittman's going to be in it this weekend. Obviously, they'll be a factor, and Macri. Those are the two who have a chance. But if I'm betting, and I've been known to do that once in a while, I'll go with an Outlaw Sweep. Brad Sweet running his own series is a conflict of interest. Isn't it antitrust? So's the NFL draft is an antitrust issue too. Just so you know. Read the antitrust laws, the NFL's. In fact, I know a lawyer who wrote a column about that once. So actually wrote a book about it. I don't want to hear antitrust because you don't have to run it. Don't run it. You don't like it, don't run the series. It's simple. Nobody makes anybody run it. You know, I see both sides of that. I don't like a guy running his own series. Don't like a guy running his own races. True. Guilty. But I also understand that there's something called greater good. And think about what High Limit's done for a second objectively. Purses have gone up. That's a fact. You have more national touring guys making more money. Also a fact. Those two things right there, you know, Brad doesn't win all. He wins a series, but he's going to. Now, he wouldn't have won the World of Outlaws last year, I don't think. I think David Gravel would have won that series. So, but I see both sides. I don't like it in one regard, but in another regard, who else is putting up the money to do that? Who else? And by the way, guys, High Limit wasn't going to be a national series. He asked to do it within the framework of the World of Outlaws, just a midweek series. Carter didn't want to do it. That's the story I've gotten. So that's a choice. It's not like Brad Sweet said, I'm going to start this national series and that's it. It's not how it went. So again, it didn't have to be this way. Moving on. Any word on the future plans of Torgerson? Torgerson will be in the 1A this week. He will be at Lincoln and the Grove. Do you think that All-Star Circuit of Champions can thrive given their place in the current sprint car landscape? I see Outlaws, High Limit, Knoxville Weekly, NARC, and PA Weekly tracks ahead of All-Star Circuit of Champions as far as interest. Yeah, I think as long as they remain in Ohio, they don't get out of their comfort zone. Like, don't start running in Kentucky. Don't start running a bunch of races in Illinois or Indiana or outside of Ohio. I think Ohio is their base. Stay with it. It works. They had a good race at Fremont. Yeah, it didn't have Brad. It didn't have David. It didn't have Carson. They had a good race. People will show up for that. I think they need to keep the majority of their races in Ohio, take care of their locals, take care of the, 30 races. I like that too. Don't go to 50 and 60 races. You're taking away supply and demand. You're losing that equation if you do that. If you want to make a trip to Pennsylvania, fine. I'm okay with one trip to Pennsylvania. Don't start coming out here 15 times. So I think they can if they stay to this model that they have this year. High limit is here due to outlaw arrogance. Yes, absolutely. I think that's a big part of it. I mean, I think Brad wants a business after he's done driving. I think there's, like, if you have a pie chart, I think that's on the pie chart. And I think it's the biggest part of the pie chart. So, should heat racing be more laps? Some places. Not at the Grove. Like Eldora. I think Kings Royal, they go just, yes. Certain places that eclipse by in a minute and a half, yes. And, you don't have time to make a move, but a lot of places it's good. I just think short track should all be 10. All be 10. And sometimes they're 8. And I don't like that. But yeah, no, 10. Some places, yes, some places no. A lot of California tracks are in questionable areas. Remember Ascot and Gardenia. Yes. Could actually hear gunshots while sitting in the stands. Yeah, it adds to the ambiance of the event. I guess. But the Antioch thing, the story I got on Antioch was, I think that stuck when he told me that. I think we were at dinner somewhere. That stuck with me all night. I couldn't believe, because you just don't. I couldn't process it. So I don't doubt that. Super late models has better racing right now. I can't. I don't watch a ton of it. Once in a while, I do. But yeah, it's they have more compounds. I like what they're doing with the tires there. I'd like to see it in sprint car racing more, but they also have longer races. They have 100-lap features, 50-lap features, 70 thing. I mean, Jesus. I think it's just different. There's been some complaints about some of their races lately, though. I've seen that chirping, so to speak. So I'm not in late model racing, so I'm not going to. That's a question for Kyle McFadden, Kevin Kovac. But I don't think sprint car racing's as hateful as people make it out to be now. I think some of that is just, I don't know. They see one bad race and right away it's easier on social media. You could go on and just say this racing's terrible. All right. 40 sprints in a feature would be fun. Oh, no. I don't want to see that. I don't like when they have provisionals. In fact, I'm all for getting rid of provisionals. I don't want to see a 28 car field. I don't want to see a 30 car field at Williams Grove. It's crap. I don't want to see it. I don't like provisionals. Yesterday when Winnipeg beat the St. Louis Blues didn't get a do-over. Game was over. That was it. What else do we got? Finally, Huset's opens on Sunday. Yes. Something to watch on Sunday nights, unless the Jets or Amherst are playing. Jim, you're something. I like your consistency. You'll watch Huset's on a laptop or something, so don't lie. Hot take. Texas is not a good track for racing. I don't think it's a hot take. They had some decent races though like Chaz said, mid 2000s, if I remember correctly. I'm 53. Memory slips a little bit sometimes, but not often though. I didn't think the racing was great this weekend. So I don't think that's a hot take. Sorry, David. Axum made a comment that he was doing something else for the next couple of weeks, maybe a midget. There you go. There you go. I did not get a response yet as to what he's doing. I thought I'd get one now. Our boy Corey Neeshaw, who puts the pools together. If you want to play a good pool, Corey Neeshaw. It's good stuff. He does his research. Although I'm going to yell at him for not getting back to me quicker on Emerson Axum. All right, what else do we got? Winding down here. Do you think Larson intentionally sandbags in high limit shows like the Chaz claims? No, I do not. I don't think it's in his DNA. Because then why would he win? Why would he win at all then? And by the way, Paul Silva gets some of that. No, I don't go with the sandbagging thing either. I just don't. You know, I don't think you're a competitor at that high of a level and go, oh, we own the series, and because they made it quite clear how they feel about people when people say they're running a series. They don't make excuses. They tell you why they do it, but I don't think they're in there saying, ooh, man, I better not, better finish second tonight. Ooh. I just don't buy it. Sweet loser. Here we go. I don't buy it. I just don't. Because he chose Port Royal to win. So Port Royal is where he said, I had enough. I'm going to win. That's the weekend he said. Because guess what? He was crap in the Tuscarora 50. Why wouldn't he have tried to win the one that paid $56,000? Why did he choose a preliminary? So that's my question with it. The shit costs too much money and is too much work to sandbag. Yeah, and Tyler, I think try telling a driver, because here's the thing too. Kyle's on the edge. We all admit that. And he can do things other guys can't. If he was worried about what people thought of him winning, wouldn't he worry about what people thought about possibly getting into somebody? Maybe short sliding a guy and not giving him room? Wouldn't he worry about that as well? You can't have it both ways. If you're going to say a guy's sandbagging, well, then he wouldn't run aggressive. He'd look terrible. Or you're saying he's just doing enough. It's easy to say because you can't prove it. And if you can't prove it, then it looks good and nobody can refute it. That's why people say it. All right. Are we out? Nope. I wonder if Husitz has figured the track out yet. Oof. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's rubber up. They know it. I know they work on it. They're track guys. I've talked to a couple people out there. They're track guy. I mean, they know what they got. You know, some tracks just do it. It's just, they don't want rubbered up races. Trust me. Although, according to some people, they probably think they do. They don't. Trust me. It's bad for the racing. It's bad for a product. Some of the best Texas tracks were Big H and Battleground. I remember Battleground. I do not remember Big H. So, Andrea Reitzel would know. Doug on line 5. Doug, what do you got for me?
Yeah, I just wondered about how come they don't pay more in the B main in some of these cases instead of top heavy in the A main.
Well, because if you say to people, hey, we're going to pay $20,000, it doesn't resonate as much as hey, we're paying $50,000 a night. And I would make the argument $50,000 has lost its luster. It used to be $50,000. People are like, oh my God, we got to see that. I do believe it's lost its luster a little bit. I think the purses just keep going up, and I think they're just pushing the needle. It gets more hype if it's a 6-figure payday, $75,000, whatever the case is. I'm not saying I agree with it. But you know,
even if you knock 5,000 off for 75,000, you still have 70,000 for the.
Yeah, I mean, this is why Knoxville Nationals does well every year. This is why you get so many cars. Right. It's because the B main pays $10,000 to miss the A main.
Right.
But not everybody has the money Knoxville does. Not everybody. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree. Lance DeWeese once said to me, he wishes the Tuscarora wouldn't pay 50, that it would pay 30, and they'd spread that 20,000 down through. I don't disagree with him, but the perception is a driver can make more than some people can make in a year in one night. Now, that doesn't affect me like that, but other people it does. I've heard people say, "Oh my God, he's going to win 100,000 tonight." Wow. So I understand what you're saying. I don't think you're wrong. Baps Motor Speedway had a non-winners race the other last week, and it paid really well. I think maybe
I remember that. I remember talking about that.
Yeah, I think maybe that's the way to go. But it's a slippery slope. Where do you draw the line? Because the purses are going up so much that 30,000 doesn't mean anything anymore. 50.
Well, that's right. I mean, as a car owner, I can tell you that it's tough.
It is tough, and again, you could come out, you can make arguments for both. So,
right. Well, I sure appreciate you talking about it. Appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you for calling. All right. What do you think of the video of Gravel Crew running off with the helmet before? I don't care. I mean, so again, as I said, why would he go if he's using that? I mean, I just don't know if he gets caught doing that, his reputation is crap. I just don't think did anybody ever think Cody Jacobs was standing down in the corner telling him where to go? We've seen that at I don't know, every track in the country. Did anybody think that he moved down because, I don't know, Donnie Schatz runs the middle and low groove at Eldora better than anybody on the planet? I haven't heard one person said those two things yet. Because we're all wrapped up in the conspiracy because it's sexy. I'm not buying it. I don't care that the guy took his helmet. I've seen other guys take people's helmets back, and then the driver goes back and then he works on his helmet after it's over. I've seen it before. Again, it's not a big deal to me. Do you think a couple high rollers will show up at Path Valley event and PA Speedway? Could. It's an off weekend. I think you'll see Brent Marks there, definitely. Definitely see Brent Marks. Think you could see some others. I'm hoping. Pay-per-view, SprintCarUnlimited.tv, so I'm hoping. What else do we got? Are there plans for extensive top wing inspection during PA Outlaws week? The Outlaws handle that. The Outlaws have their tech crew. The PA guys will get their off night. People got to remember too, where's the personnel coming from this? Everybody wants all this teching, but nobody wants to go out and get employees to do it, maybe? It makes me think people have never been to a racetrack. These tracks in central PA. And no, Chaz, I did not call you sexy on there is no chance of that ever. I saw it on the chat. Pennsylvania tracks struggle with personnel to work the refreshment stand. They struggle to get personnel to do corner flagging. These tech guys don't make a lot of money. And I can tell you this, the Danny Dietrich Facebook thing could cost Baps a tech guy. Because he was called a joke in front of everybody. Again, does he need that? He works a regular job. Does he need to be called everything? These guys are not a dime a dozen. Personnel is tough to get at a racetrack. Who wants to work all week at their job and then go work at a racetrack and be criticized all the time, no matter what you do? People don't talk about that. Big picture. I want to impress upon everybody. Big picture. There's always a big picture to it. It's not as easy as you think. I know, Chaz, I know you like the third party deal. We talked about it a little the other day on the phone outside of on air. Who's paying for it? And then you're going to get guys who don't know a sprint car, and then that's going to come into question. So you're right back where you started. The teching issue, do I like it? No. Do I like that there's not quote unquote effective teching? No. But I also understand the sport is what it is. And in many cases, it's a beer league. It's beer league baseball in a lot of cases. I'm not saying the Outlaws are like that. I'm not saying high limits like that. I'm not even saying all the tracks in the country are like that. I'm saying in some places it is. It's niche. It doesn't have enough money to go out and get, say like the NFL, get referees who are part of a big pool and they evaluate them and then they get sat down if they do poorly. It's not like professional sports. It's not even like NASCAR. NASCAR had to work up to the big claw that drops on the cars. Cheating was way more rampant in the 70s and 80s than I would say it is now, because there was hardly any teching. But again, it's a slippery slope. I understand wanting more teching. It's fiscally difficult. And these guys get beat up at tracks just verbally. They don't need the aggravation. So personnel's tough. There's a lot of pitfalls to this. It's a lot of layers. I know it's not something to brag too much about. However, it is nice to see Lance having speed again. Yeah, they've changed a couple things. I know they're working on it. It's getting closer. They turned the corner a little bit a couple weeks ago. I believe it was Williams Grove. But they're definitely better than they were. Definitely better than they were. Now, are they going to win outlaw races this week? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they're better than they were. Will we ever see Alan Crimes race again? Good question. I just don't know. I just don't know. It's not on his radar right now. I know family's pretty important. All right. Which race in PA is the bigger and better race? National Open or Tuscarora 50? National Open. I'm not saying I don't like the Tuscarora 50. I do like the Tuscarora 50. It's an event. It's become one of the bigger events in PA, but the National Open has been around since, I'm forgetting the year. I'm drawing a blank. It's embarrassing, but it's been around longer. It's a national event. Has been for a while. It pays $75,000 to win. Williams Grove, whether people like it or don't like it, it's a historic facility. One of the top 3 in the nation from a famous standpoint. So the National Open's a bigger event. Finding experienced guys for teching is like trying to find a local sports journalist that understands sprint cars. Would agree with that. It is not easy. There's not guys running around wanting to do this. And then if you get a guy, let's take Ryan Hand, who's on my podcast. He'd be great to do it. Former crew chief. I can tell you rules are rules. There are a few people that I know in life who are as serious and straight line as Ryan Hand. But he would get criticized. Oh, you're playing favorites. What? So, maybe opening it up is the way to go. Maybe it is. Don't know. But that'll be a slow death to the sport. Can't wait till May 17th and 18th, catching the top 2 sprint car series in 2 days. High limit at Utica, Rome, 17th, and Outlaws at Cornwall, the 18th, both within 3 hours of my house. I might actually go to Utica and Ramseyville. Brent Smith and I have been talking about it. It's a weekend deal. We might fly up there, just make a quick weekend spin. So there you go, Jim. Jim Gifford up in Buffalo, Ramsonville. I might get to Ramsonville. Kreiner's still building engines for anyone in Central PA. Not that I know of. Not that I know of. Do you think High Limit will do better to avoid a month-long hiatus next season with the rainouts? It was painful. That 25 days had nothing to do with rainouts either. So it was 25 days. They need to. Look, I'm good with 2 weeks. I'm not good with 25 days. You just lose momentum in your series. I think being in the news, I just think, I don't want relevance. They're still relevant, but I just think you lose that. I'm looking for a word. Importance. People have short attention spans. If they don't see you, out of sight, out of mind. You don't want that. So I think 3 weeks is a little too long. I think they had some other things going on. They were working on some personnel stuff and some stuff with the series. So I get it. So we'll see if they do it next year. I doubt they will. Did anybody think there is a big STV you can see from the moon at Eldora? I guess. I don't know. It's funny. All right. We got time for two more. Two more after this one. So 3 more. Random question. Do we know what happened to Alan Crimes? He was supposed to drive the Plank 11, thought in like 2023. It was called off due to personal reasons and haven't seen him since. Yes. He was dealing with a family issue. I'm not going to go into it, obviously, HIPAA, but he was dealing with some family issues, and that took precedence over his racing career. Simple as that. No other reason. And he hasn't been back since. There seems to be a push to make professional sprint car drivers more accessible to the fans. Why do you think Sheldon Haudenschild doesn't like to hang out with his fans more and be a people person? I've never seen him not. I mean, in the pit area, he's always. In fact, one time I went to interview him and he said, "Hey, can you wait until I talk to him and sign autographs for my fans?" I have not witnessed that about Sheldon. And if it has happened, please keep in mind, these guys have bad nights too. They're people. They're not monkeys. You sometimes are going to have a bad night, or you don't know what's happening in their day. I'm not saying they shouldn't sign autographs. I'm not saying they shouldn't be accessible. But remember, this is their job. For Sheldon Haudenschild, that's his living. Might have a bad night. By the way, National Open, Gordon Johncock, 1963. Good. Thank you, Casey. So I have not witnessed that out of Sheldon. I mean, you might have had a different experience. And I'm not saying you didn't have that experience. I'm saying I've not seen that yet. All right. Plus, Danny Sausage race fans are relevant and don't have a skin in the game. What is your opinion? I always hate like I've been told already, oh, you never drove a car, so you don't know. Well, you know what? I'm involved in racing since 1977. There's things I know. So I don't like saying people aren't involved. You know, I mean, they can have an opinion. They're allowed to have an opinion. Danny Dietrich is loved by a lot. I mean, he is revered by his fans. He's also hated by a large group of other ones. So it's all good. It makes the world go round. Tyler Swank, this is the last comment. I'm losing interest. Wrap up, Jeremy. I'm losing my voice, and I got to do a 90 at 9 yet. So thank you very much to everybody who joined the show. I'm sorry I had to move it a day. We had a really good response. You know, I'm actually surprised that we did this well, moving it a day early. So again, thank you to everybody. That's going to wrap up SprintCarUnlimited.com live. Stay tuned to the YouTube channel. all week. We'll have plenty of content. Also to SprintCarUnlimited.com, we'll have full coverage of the World of Outlaws event. And by the way, one last thing, we've hired a writer to cover Knoxville Raceway weekly. So we will have more coverage from Knoxville Raceway on SprintCarUnlimited.com starting next week. Again, thank you very much for joining the show, and we'll be back next week. Stay tuned.